Hey everybody. Hey. Gonna let a couple more folks come in. We are trying this again. I am Therese Nelson. I am back at it again this Friday. I'm actually in Jackie's normal slot, but I'll be back next week at 1. This week, I'm super excited to be talking with Kiano Moju. She's one of the new feature chefs on OWN TV's Food Fantasies program, which airs every Saturday at 1:30, and their new original food content lineup from 12 to 2. So I'm waiting for Kiano to join in, but I'm super excited to talk to her. She has a really interesting career that's really kind of been at the forefront of digital food content since its real beginnings. So let's see. Oh, here we go.
Hello.
Hey there.
Hi, so lovely to meet you. Thank you for, I know we had a little rescheduling.
No worries. I had thought about it right. Going live the first time. I was like, there was no clarification about time zone, so um, no big deal. I appreciate you taking time after it's a holiday weekend. You should be relaxing your nerves.
No, I'm in the middle of like kind of behind me. I have all my maize ready to bake a cake.
Awesome. Awesome. So, as I mentioned to everybody who's just joined us, we have the lovely Kiano Moju. She is a new featured chef on OWN's new programming on a show called Food Fantasies. But her career really spans, I think, the most interesting parts of this new era of digital food content. You may know her work from Tasty. All of the cool, interesting things you may have noticed on Tasty when you circle back and think about who produced them is actually it's been Keanu. So I'm super excited to get into talking to you about the length of your career, all the cool things you've done, and your newest project, Jikoni Kitchen. So that's a whole other thing. But I would love if we could start from the beginning because you have such an interesting origin story, and I'm always interested to talk to people who are from the West Coast, but specifically the Oakland area.
Oh, yes, the Bay Area. I feel like I'm running out of time when I can like claim Oakland as my home because I haven't lived in the Bay honestly since I was a teenager. But I grew up, I was born in Oakland, California. My mom worked for the city until last year when she retired. So she was there for 20 some years. So we are Oakland folk. But I went to school back east. I went to grad school in London and somehow got duped coming back to California after spending as many years as I could being far, far, far away. And yeah, I came here to start the job I had at Tasty. And so that's kind of what brought me back to the West Coast.
I in sort of reading your bio and sort of following the lines that sort of brought you to food professionally. Um, you have a degree in communications, but talk to me about rhetorical studies because I find it super fascinating and it makes you like uniquely prepared to do work in this new era of food media. So I would love if you could talk a little bit about what that degree looks like and how you chose it.
Yeah, I feel like so I have two degrees. I have my bachelor's of science in communications or rhetorical studies and my master's in publishing, which I feel like is probably the more day-to-day one that applies to my job. But the bachelor's degree in communications, it really was focusing on the different ways we can, send out information and trying to figure out what is the best medium to get your message across or heard. So very multiple disciplinary. So kind of like my publishing was like a follow-up to it, where I did it in London and it was old school. We learned how to make books by hand, and then we're learning about the magazines and then the websites, all that. So the two together are very much a part of the work I do now, where I work in food media, but not per se in one specific sector. I work with clients where we're working on cookbooks with them. We're working on digital projects at the studio. We now are working with TV networks. So kind of in all the different mediums of that we consume recipe content is what I work in now.
Yeah. I find it interesting just because I think there's something really interesting about the conversations we're having these days about like identity in food
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think that we as specific as we could possibly be about the ways in which we use media as a tool and how we apply those tools. Because it just feels sometimes like there's this like disconnect between the usefulness of different platforms and how we want to message and sort of package the stories we want to tell. And something about the sort of ethos around Jikoni Kitchen, it just makes me sort of see that you seem to have a eye on the landscape that is a lot more strategic, or like, I don't know, just it feels more prepared to be in this current moment. Like the way food media is sort of shifting and changing, you seem uniquely prepared to be as dexterous as possible. And so I would love if you could just talk to us about how you came up with the concept and just sort of, you laid out a little bit, but just sort of expanding what the function of your studio is.
Yeah, so I kind of say we have two businesses that are housed under Jikoni. So we have our physical studio in Los Angeles. I'm in our test kitchen right now, and we have three studio spaces here. So we have our test kitchen here, and then further down the hall, we have our actual kitchen studio, and that's where people shoot cooking shows and cooking videos. And then we have another place that's like kind of all the behind the scenes of production and where all those people live in our house. So people either come to our studio or rent it out, shoot their own shows. Own actually shot one of their other cooking shows, the one with Tanya Holland here at my studio. And the other part of it is that we have clients that we either co-produce with or we produce for out of the studio. That's half one of Jikoni. Second half Jikoni is our editorial that we started up earlier this summer. And that is our website, and we create videos that we've started publishing, I think about a month ago, across all social platforms. And that is really putting a focus on what, has been traditionally underrepresented in Western food media. So just overall looking at the landscape, there are sections, countries, regions, even within America, cuisine types that are vastly overlooked. But I would say, as far as like the widest spread region, that we have had, I think, too little information out is the African continent and overall the African diaspora. If you just think about how much we know about South American food versus European and Asian. I challenge, walk down the street and ask someone to name 5 dishes from the continent of Africa, let alone one country. It's not happening. So I feel like
100%.
that has the most work to be done. So that's where a majority of our focus lies. But it's kind of a way in, political, social, where I'm like, why aren't these represented? But also as a food lover, I'm like, how dare y'all keep delicious food away from me? Like, who told you to do that? And just being a lover of food and lover of cultures, also wanting to learn this information, wanting to have these cultural recipes, because a lot of Black cultures, we come from oral tradition. So it's not like I can be like, ooh, I really want to make that one dish my grandma makes and Google it. There's so little information out there. So it's part of us putting out more delicious content for people to consume. But it's another part of it is that we realize working on this project is documenting our culture, because oral tradition due to modernization isn't practiced the way it used to be. So it's important more now than ever that we actually start writing down our recipes, stalking our grandmas in the kitchen and aunties, being like right up beside them, being like, what you doing? I don't measure, but like just estimate. And like kind of like it's a lot of work that we all have to participate in. So with our website, we have it where anyone can go and submit a recipe. We don't want the gatekeeping. Like if someone is from Mozambique, I've never been there, I don't know the food, who am I to tell you whether it's good or not? So we just want to give the platform for it and then use our professional prowess of being food content creators to collaborate with people. They send us their recipes, we shoot it, and then we publish it together.
I love that. And it feels, there's so many things to talk to you about. And I feel like I want to get to your program, certainly, because it's such an interesting pivot for home. But I'm really interested in, because I think early on, I mean, you sort of started at Tasty really early on when they started pivoting towards food content. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about I guess there's something really interesting about BuzzFeed sort of making that pivot when it did, because I think the landscape was just getting to a place where they understood that other spaces outside of food proper understood that one, digital was going to have to be, you're going to have to understand digital landscape, but also
Yeah.
that you had to translate cultures in ways that were going to be accessible and sort of, there's just a language you had to create that was going to be able to connect people to cultures they may have been unfamiliar with. And that work is hard. I mean, sort of creating an alphabet that gives you words, gives you language. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that process, because you seem to have broken sort of a code and applied it to the work you're doing now.
Um, my kind of philosophy with how we present or want to present our foods is normalize. So it isn't that traditionally when we've seen Western media cover foods of other regions, or they'll, there's this whole thing of like in the recipe italicizing certain ingredients or like having to give too much backstory, where I'm kind of just like approach it from the same era of as you would anyone else, and just present it as normal to the person and trying to find what we have in common to present food rather than differences. I think food travel, especially, it's always been like, look at these people, look at these like interesting things they have, and like it was so much on like what makes us different, what makes us different, what makes us different. And I kind of try to find that anchor piece that is like universally relatable.
Mm,
So we can like reduce the othering and being like, oh, that's weird. And you can be like, you can watch a video and be like, wow, I think I've kind of had something like that. I was just like in a different country and they're like these small odd variances. But I try to present it as what we have in common first, whether that be an ingredient, whether that be a situation where it's like a family meal, like that crosses cultures, really to like open ears and eyes, rather than it being um, in the I think it's just exotified and like being like, look at this cool thing that doesn't reach to universal. It's a very niche market, and kind of under the thing of like everyone's food is everyday food. So if you present it as such, people are more likely to receive it as such.
mm. Yeah, perfectly put. I think there's such a, it seems so simple, but to your point, it's really not the way that a lot of spaces are kind of contending with our food culture. It becomes this thing of like us being responsible for making that distinction, right? Like you sort of, how you show up in spaces is kind of how people are going to receive what you are putting out. And so I wonder, I'm not wonder, I hope that folks are paying attention to what you're doing, because it sort of feels like the way things should always have been. We should have always had these spaces where
Mm-hmm.
you just let folks be their whole self. I think the one of the most interesting, I think it's one of the points where I started to take tasting seriously was that party rice feature you did, because it was this thing of
Uh,
like it just felt like I don't know, I just was consuming tasty sort of in periphery and wasn't really, I don't know, I just wasn't really taking it as seriously. And then when I saw that piece, it was like, huh, this is the thing. Like this was
oh, that makes me so
recipes that,
glad to hear.
because it was that same kind of quick like relatable recipe in the same
Mm-hmm.
form, but it was like, what would it look like if you actually put some rigor into the cultures that were being presented? And it was just so, I don't know, it felt like, huh, this is what these kinds of platforms could be like.
I'm
um
so glad that video was a big project for me. Up until that point, the only culturally focused content we had done fell within like tent poles of like holidays. So Black videos and Black History Month, Asian videos and Asian Pacific Heritage Month. And it's following that trend. And I'm watching this and I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not the point that I was trying to get across. So I made that video on purpose in the summertime. I was like, there's no blackness happening right now. This is just a video with delicious food on a regular day because that's where this content belongs. Like it's everyday content, not a seasonal tentpole content. So I actually shot that video between two continents. If you remember, one of the people is English because I was on vacation when I decided to do this, and I was like, I need to make it happen. I had a former business partner in London, and I was like, hey, can you come into the Tasty UK office so I can shoot a video with you? just because I wanted it done and I wanted it out there, and like crossed my fingers and prayed it didn't totally tank or fail to like, because otherwise it wouldn't have proved my point.
Right.
And it still is. I mean, I have videos that have done way bigger numbers, but that video still has like over 1 million on YouTube, and I'm very grateful for the people who engaged and celebrated that content because I really needed that to like prove, and still to this day can use as a data point of like, see, we can just show up with a video on a regular ass day and people be into it, because there's always that whole thing that I think we've seen the film industry contend with, and now food folks since the summer we've been pushing, where we can carry content on our own and it can be interesting. It doesn't have to be tied to something, like it doesn't have to be part of Black History Month. It can just exist and people be interested. And that's what that
Mm-hmm.
video was out to prove, and it did prove. And I'm so grateful to everyone who participated in it, because shooting, it's those projects are, it's like 4 videos in one, but for us and our quota as employees still counts as one video. So it was a bigger one, and I still had to do on top of my workload, but I was like, no, like this needs to happen because I need you guys to see that we can do more of this cultural content year round.
I mean, it kind of feels like the like sort of manifesto for Jikoni. Like it feels like that is. I mean, we're watching the sort of pieces that exist on the platform right now. It just feels fresh and modern and youthful, but also just no qualification. Like this is where the food comes from. This is the backstory. Here's why it's delicious. In the same
Yep.
way we think about all other food content we enjoy. I would love if you talk a little bit about London. I think it's so interesting. You spent 2 years doing your master's, and the sort of I've been paying attention just because the food world is so it's always fascinating. But there's this sort of Black conscience sort of a rise in the UK, and thinking about people like the Ground the Cook, Ground the Papa Boys, thinking about Riaz Phillips, and there are a lot of people right now who are thinking really critically about Black identity in the UK. And I was wondering if you
Mm-hmm.
had any insights about your time there and what the correlations between sort of Black chefs of color in the UK organized in the way that we are here. If there are any similarities to the moments they're having, because a lot of conversations that I'm listening to sound like the ones we were having a decade ago, 5 years ago. And I'm
I
wondering
found
what
it,
collaborations look
yeah,
like.
I think it's definitely different. I think when you live in a foreign country as like an outsider, like my
Mm-hmm.
experience there is so much more of like being an American than anything else. But I almost felt a little bit like the black population in UK, I believe, is like around 4%, but I'm not sure how it is in London. And I know London is very much its own cultural compared to the rest of the country. But there are a couple things where I almost saw, and it was small bits and pieces where I'm like, they are a bit ahead of us. I can
Mm.
feel as far as exposure of restaurants. Um, I don't know how or why, but particularly in London, I know there are many times I go to a market. There's street food markets everywhere in that city. I miss it so much. And you could, like, every little neighborhood has its own street food market where people go down with their 5 pounds, grab a lunchbox. And there's always in the market closest to my home, the longest line was for a Ghanaian food stall. And I would just stare at that, being like, the day I see the same line for African food in America, wow. And I think it's
Okay.
because I don't know how or why, because I didn't grow up in the UK, but I literally felt like even if there's definitely still racism in the UK, whichever, it felt like there's a lot more awareness of other people's cultures than we have in America. Like I had, white British friends who were born and raised in London who were trading lunch boxes with kids in their class for jollof rice. Like they knew this food, they didn't need explanation, um, because that's how that city is of London. You have Caribbean restaurants all over the city. You have a lot more than I've ever, particularly in California. We don't really have much. I know New York is a little bit better, but it's still like a bit in particular neighborhoods where I'm like, I'm in the most popular happening neighborhoods. And like there's a Jamaican restaurant, and everyone's eating at it. So when it comes to cultural food knowledge and awareness and consumption, I think London is better than most American cities. But as far as like the experience that people have, as far as like respect and maybe who gets to make it and gets to be seen in the more public space of food, I think there's a lot more struggles. But overall, like I think as far as just like the everyday like consumption of food and awareness of who's eating what, I think they're doing way
Hmm.
better than we are here.
Okay, I love that.
I was
Um,
shocked. I never thought I'd see
yeah.
the day. Seeing a bunch of white men sitting on the sidewalk eating a goosey soup. It happened. It happens. It's real.
Well, do you? I mean, I wonder what your take. Well, if you could posit why that's the case. I mean, in terms of, I think a lot of the struggle we have here, at least the struggle that I'm hearing about and thinking about, and sort of witnessing among my peers, is really about how your point about what the marketplace will bear, or what the sort of American palate or whatever imagination will be willing to pay for as part of it, but also just some of it feels like more about the dysfunction of the physical restaurant industry than it does about
Mm,
chefs and their willingness to cook culturally, because that's a separate conversation that I think has been coming along in its own
yeah.
at its own pace. But the getting the dollars to be able to open the
The
physical brick and
investments
mortar
and all
space,
that.
yeah, yeah.
That's Yeah, there's so many, like, when you think of the food, at least media space, because that's like what I most specialize in, there's so many, like, I think we still have like our lanes as far as the media end of like print. And our print right now still is like cookbooks. How many cookbooks do we have of certain regional cuisines? And even for me, when I'm looking, my mother's from Kenya, and I'm looking at East African cookbooks, they're written by East Africans, but like by non-Black East Africans. We have
Mm,
really big Indian population that came post-colonial when they're building the railway. So a lot of the East African cookbooks are written by them, and or like other expats, not like published cookbooks by like Black Africans. So it even like reads of like who gets opportunities, full stop, whether it be in America, Europe, or on the continent itself. Of like even on the continent of Africa, there's a lot of evidence of second class citizenship that I've witnessed physically whenever I'm in Nairobi. I brought a coworker with me last time I went to Kenya. We walk in the hotel lobby, she gets offered drinks, and the rest of us don't because she's white. But I'm like, it's everywhere. So there's like so far to go. So any inch of progress is huge because it's not. Um, I think something that we can clearly say is it's a global issue. It's not an American issue. It's not a British issue. It's literally an issue that the planet has to contend with as far as how we see equality of our culture.
perfectly put. I would love if we could little maybe pivot to talking about. I mean, you may have insights based on your relationship with OWN and how this sort of project to for them to pivot into original food content kind of came around about. But love if you could start talking a little bit about your show, about just this sort of move on the part of OWN, because it just feels perfectly timely. I remember having a conversation about 2 years ago. Someone like, what would it look like if these amazing platforms that didn't necessarily think about food started thinking about food, especially the ones
Hmm.
that are thinking about and talking about Black culture, because it's such a right time to be thinking about food, and there's so many Black creators that are just so ready to just shine, and so it feels beautifully timely for OWN to sort of pick up the time. But if you could just talk a little bit about how that program kind of came about, and your program in particular, because it's so good.
Yeah, I would love to know how they found me. To this day, I keep asking folks, they're like, oh, we've known. I'm like, it's for me, it was such a cool opportunity. I've started my career in digital, it's mostly in digital. TV is something I've never done to those projects. I was just like, what's going on? But um, one, it's kind of all the same thing when you're shooting it, which was a fun learning. But this series is, I think it's really fun because we're just like, enjoying the pleasures of food. It's all
Hmm.
about what do we like to eat? What do we like to make? And just like, there's no rhyme or reason behind, oh, but this is great. It's just like the joy of food so much, and celebration. And I think, particularly timing wise, cultural celebration is so important. And when I say cultural celebration, it doesn't always have to be of like, this is what I grew up with traditional. Like, culture is a daily practice. You exist, you're Black, you're making food, part of Black culture. It's not a box. And I think that's really cool of how we have in this series such, like anyone who watches it, there's such a variety of personalities and cuisine types. Where when I went, they have like another chef making some southern food, and like I've really barely been to this house, so I'm just like, are we allowed to taste anything? Because it's so different from what I cook, and I think that's what's really great that we'll see in this show is there's so many ways that we're enjoying food, but as individuals, and there isn't this like monolith of what Black chefs think or what they make. We're just like a bunch of people who really enjoy cooking as well as eating, and are sharing those recipes and our favorite dishes. It's just literally just cultural celebration.
Yeah, I love it so much because it also feels like if I've been thinking a lot about what it would look like if we collectively just move center, like just move the center of where we're picking creators from, what kind of cultures we start to talk about, and center as
Hmm.
your word normalize, like what just that simple pivot, right? It doesn't no, but there's no sort of branding or marketing with this new sort of copy programming that says it's all Black everything, but it is, and it
Yeah.
just happens. It's just so dope and so cool to watch. So such a
And it's,
variety of
yeah.
chefs. Yeah.
And it's nice to not be try to be boxed in. I think this summer in the middle while everything is going on, a lot of non-white food writers and recipe writers express of how when they do get opportunities, they get like pigeonholed. They're like, "Oh, well, we want your cultural recipe and that's it from you." And not taking like the first episode, I'm making cheesecake and like pumpkin bread. I'm Kenyan, I'm Nigerian. That is not of my culture, but it's food that I make. It's food that I like to make. And it's so nice to be able just to like be yourself, make what's within your wheelhouse, and not try to like be in this like Black food typecast, which if it is for American, like I don't have that identity. It's not the culture I grew up in. And so it's nice. And I think for myself, it's always hard to see where I could fit in food media because I never had a reference of what it's like to be a first generation African, as well as someone who comes from two very different cultures, like Kenya and Nigeria, on opposite sides of a whole continent. There's very little our foods have in common.
Right.
Um, so just to have space just to make food as I do and no one try to like mold it differently was really nice.
Yeah. I think it really comes across in the way just everything about it, like the way it's shot is beautiful, just the way that nobody has to. It's like that Toni Morrison. Like I don't have to talk. That the folks are talking to us. They don't have to. There's no contorting of like where these cultures come from. You do due diligence and figure out things you don't know about, or sort of look up
Hmm.
term, ingredients and terms, or whatever. But just by moving center, it just changes the posture of the whole thing. So good. I would love if you if you could talk us through or think a little bit about the future because it just feels like you are primed to sort of go into this next era of food with this really just fresh and clean and clear way of being. You have collaborations, like you mentioned, with lots of brands who are looking to you for expertise. And I'm wondering if you could talk us through, because a lot of folks here are, we work in multiple areas in the food space.
Hmm.
Um, what you see the future landscape is. I mean, I think about, like, I don't know if you've read Kevin Alexander's Burn the Ice. He talked about basically the industry burned to the ground this year. It was almost 2 years ago when he was sort of foreshadowing a lot of the shifts that we see that really have nothing to do with COVID, right? I think we're always sort of
Yeah.
on track to need to do better by one another and certainly by our culture. But it just feels like we all kind of primed right now to be much more effective stewards of our culture. And I'm
Yep.
wondering, just as someone who has such a a kind of clear vision of the possibilities of these platforms, these such sorts of platforms. What do you think the next era in food is going to look like?
Yeah, I
Food
think
or media?
digital content is the biggest blessing for us because the problem that, food from the African diaspora as well as other underrepresented cuisines have had is the issue of gatekeeping, is the fact that you needed to ask someone's permission or even know who to ask for permission, have them respond to you in order to get your voice heard, in order for you to share what you wanted to share. And what digital has done is it's blown that gate wide open. Yes, and they can have their stuff and have power, but the power is literally in your palm of your hand in your cell phone. And I think because there's just so much more access to information, you can learn anything. I never went to film school. My day-to-day job, I'm a video producer, I'm a director. I took like a video production class in high school too long ago. But because of just drive, will, and the internet, was able to figure it out, was able to just watch YouTube videos and practice and repeat, was able to drag my dining table by a window and learn how to take food photos. And there's so much that we can do on our own, learn on our own, and create on our own. I think it's people really pushing and saying, okay, I want to do this, and then getting out of that want step into the making it. I'm maybe atypical and untraditional in the way I create content, where it's like I can plan, but then I just got to make it. You can perfect it later, you can go and analyze it later, see what we liked about it, not like about it, but just go make the damn thing. Don't sit on these ideas. If you need help, you see someone else in that same lane as you, hit them up, DM them, ask a mutual friend to connect you, collaborate and create. That's all you can do. Collaborate and create. Keep doing you. Then the people who are interested in yourself, they will find you in time. And just keep carrying on.
Kiano Moju, we are talking to a very brilliant chief creative, principal creative for Jikoni Creative Studios based in LA. She is one of the featured chefs on OWN's new Food Fantasies program airing at 1:30 p.m. on Saturdays. Um, yeah, that's something so perfect about that like just do it, just put it out there. So many folks who are like viable right now, folks who just have been consistent about content, just sort of
Mm-hmm.
being like length in the game is like one of the biggest parts of it. And just like put your thing out in the world. It's gonna be fly. Like if you have once you see have such a clear vision for the thing you want to do, it's gonna be dope. Like I don't know. And
Yeah.
just it's like a forgiving medium as well, it seems.
And I think for us, it's so much like a strength in numbers thing. I'm a big fan, and this is what I was trying to do at Tasty, of like one off, like a little speckle here and there. It's like if we want to use a food metaphor, if we are seasoning a pot of food, right? And we want this to be like a turmeric curry. If we put a sprinkle of the turmeric in there, it's not going to come through. You're going to have to put enough in there. And if you don't have the amount, we're all putting into this pot until we have that flavor in there. So it's me creating, it's different brands creating, it's the companies who are here in LA who are, trying to represent us. It's other independent creators. The more we're all doing in this space, the more visibility, the more normalization to get. So I think collaboration for us is super key. Know thy peers. The more we create
Sorry,
together,
say
the
that part again.
better.
No,
Like
yeah, please
you
know
we
thy
need
peers. Say that part again.
we need to know each other, work with each other, connect and support each other. You don't lose anything by it. I mean, if you can learn anything from YouTubers, the cross promotion makes everybody win. And the more of us that are creating, the more respected our content will be, the more normalized the content we're putting out will be. So in order to help support creators, especially those who are here in LA, it's like an unofficial program we have. Anytime, someone who's really putting in their own time, their own money to put out this like cooking or food content that is out here to represent, which is lacking of, if you email us and saying, hey, I'm from this person, I'm really trying to create these videos to do this thing, can I rent the studio? I just kind of being like, you're doing this independently, pay as you will. Like, it can be whatever. I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to push you on it. If the studio is available, come through, make your content. Because I know supporting other Black creatives is going to benefit us all. It's an ecosystem, it's a community we have to build. Before the pandemic, we were doing events here, discussions, workshops to help bring the next generation of people who want to work in food media to connect and network and learn the skills. So this is kind of like a way we can do it right now. So we've had folks in here who are up and coming on Instagram, up and coming on YouTube. They roll here on a Saturday afternoon, shoot some stuff, and I'm like, leave it clean.
I mean, that's everything. That's everything, though, Kiana. Like, I wanted you to like that, put a fine point on that part, because I've just been hearing a lot of pessimism about the ways in which we model community, a lot of pessimism about sort of the fickleness of the attention span of sort of food media, and excuse me, this kind of cynicism around the attention a lot of folks have gotten over the summer because of like white guilt or whatever. But to your point, it's like attention that is fickle or kind of, cyclical or whatever, does not change the fact that you're still out here doing your work consistently. And so I wonder if you have any insight or you have any opinions about sort of life beyond this moment, because I feel like what you're building really is not beholden to this moment. You started before pandemic. You've been thinking about these. You sort of are building a community that is not beholden to this moment. But what do you say to folks who think that, once the attention span of white folks or white people don't feel guilty anymore after 2021, that it won't be any room for diversity or for our stories?
It's the same stuff I was preaching, when we were in Tasty, of like how our culture isn't seasonal. It's not a trend. It is everyday content, as in editorial, we like to say evergreen.
That's right.
There's no time limit on it. As long as we exist, there's content to be made, there's stories to be told. And I think the part that folks need to remember is that just because something gets old to you, that story is still interesting or new to somebody else. There's a reason why. Just like think about cinema. How many times have we seen the same movie, aka story, told time and time and time again? Nostalgia is real. People connect to what they know. People connect to what's familiar and comfort. So you can make it again and again and again and again and again and again, and it'll never get boring. Because that's how we are as people. We seek comfort in what's familiar, what we know, what we've seen. You like something, you're going to watch it a few times. So keep doing what you're doing. You think you've like, oh, but I already made collard greens once 5 years ago. Make it again, change up one spice, change up the new video, make it have a different sound. Doesn't matter. It's either new to somebody or someone's like, oh yeah, I should try that. I've made that recipe in a while. Like, it doesn't matter. Keeping on. It's a bottomless pit of content. There is the well will never dry.
Yeah, Ken, I feel like we need you to do like, sort of digital content workshops. It's been so brilliant. Yeah, if you are in the LA area, I mean, you need to be reaching out. But are you collaborations are national as well? I mean, it feels like such a perfect and interesting time to be thinking about digital content. And there's some people who maybe were dipping their toe for a little while, and I just feel like this is perfect time in watching the work you're doing. Your studio is just so good, and I want more. There's such a vibrancy to the
Thank you. I'm happy. We shot those
aesthetic.
videos earlier this summer, but then, contending with having our business during pandemic took a minute to get them out. But like, this is like my career. This is what I enjoy doing. I like eating food. I like eating food that I make, that other people make. And if people come here and make the food, I am not going to ever complain about it. So we, we have a great time. We're starting up, like we're trying to refigure our cookbook club, how that looks remotely. But this past week we pulled 6 cookbooks off the shelf, made dishes from all of them to share with folks to let people know of like there are, even though we don't have many, delicious resources where you can still experience the joys of traveling, of eating through these books, enjoy something different, pull one little nugget to incorporate in your day-to-day cooking. Um, it's a simple pleasure that we all have ability to some extent have access to. So everyone should indulge a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yes, I am. What are you reading right now? I feel like there's such a the last couple of years have been such an embarrassment of riches, but the last, I mean, even this summer there were so many books that we didn't really. I mean, pandemic be damned. So many good books that just sort of popped up recently. So
Yeah.
what's on your shelf right now?
So I am shamelessly an audiobook person. I
Same,
am a
same.
big multitasker. Like I need sound when I'm driving, I need sounds when I'm cooking. And I found a lot lately that like listening to podcasts and audiobooks while cooking is like the best thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been kind of catching up on like some autobiographies that I just hadn't gotten around to. So I started Michelle's, but I finished most recently Trevor Noah's. And I'm just like, how does one person live such a wild, crazy life before the age of 10? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think I'm just going to keep chipping away on autobiographies. I think as a director, I'm just naturally interested in people and their stories. So that's a genre. Like, I can't remember the last time I read something that was like fiction. Um, so it's definitely just going to keep chipping away at autobiographies and hopefully get to President Obama's very soon.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna start that one next week. I want to be respectful of your time. If anybody has any questions, please drop them in the comment or in the question bar. But um, yeah, it's just I love so much. Um, I wonder if you could talk a little bit. You mentioned a couple times sort of scope of what Jikoni is about, but if people are looking to sort of take their work to the next level or sort of collaborate or are thinking about using your services, if you just like lay out a little bit more clear, a little bit more talk a little bit more about the services you guys do, because I mean I know you're talking about actual help with production, but like let us know, because I feel like there's a lot of creators here who need to be in your DMs and in the Jikoni email to collaborate, because it's just it's a perfect way of thinking about the way we need to be operating in food
Yeah.
spaces.
So we right now, I think we have a couple series that we're piloting. One of them is Cooking the Diaspora, which is really highlighting the different chefs, bloggers, and just like home cooks who have recipes they want to share. We did all of them kind of like in a COVID friendly Zoom meeting one. I think for our second season, we're going to try to do some social distance shooting with people. So if anyone has a restaurant they think we should be covering, hit us up. If you are the restaurant chef owner, hit us up. And then also we're going to be starting a new series called My Jikoni, and that's kind of like our little bite-sized videos. So those are going to be, this is how you can tell I'm a podcast lover. Those are going to be audio note submissions, just because we want to once again not limit our work to people who physically can come into LA. So we ask folks, if you have a recipe, whether it's your own, your auntie's, your grandma's, you want to share, send it to us on our website. And then also submit a little audio note around like 1 minute, just introducing yourself and sharing your story. We'll cook it in the studio, interstitch over your storytelling, include a lovely picture of you. So yeah, those are the two collaborative series we're working on right now. And then the third way is like for people, we're really tiny teams, so we don't necessarily have the bandwidth to produce for people. So right now, what we can do is during our off hours, offer space to independent creators who have a buddy with the camera and an idea they want to shoot. We're happy to offer our studio when it's available, so you can have like a very pretty kitchen
Gorgeous.
to shoot your content.
So good. So good. I'm just excited to see what's next for you guys because it feels so timely. I'm so encouraged whenever I see folks who are starting projects that um just move center, man. Just create this just like vibrancy. It doesn't have to apologize for itself or qualify itself. And it's just I don't know, so it just feels right on time and just people should be paying attention. So if you are not following Kiano or Jikoni, Jikoni.co, please do. You can just Instagram and keep current with all the cool things they have going on. You can check out the website, get into Kiano's bio and all of the brilliant content she's produced over the years. But yeah, man, it's just you feel ripe for collaboration. So folks should be sliding into your DMs post haste.
Yeah, it's very nice to not have to do all the things. Collaborating is the most fun. That's why I left blogging and moved into
Mm,
production because
yeah,
blogging is a one-woman band, and I love just like having different ideas in one space where we can like create something really dope. So
yeah, man.
I'm excited. I mean, but this is like for us, this is like a minute for the long game. We're just gonna keep
That
chipping
part.
away. Like it's not, oh, let's give it a try. Like I went to do my master's degree in publishing to learn how to do this. It's why I went over to England. And now that I'm very lucky to have opened the space to create content, I have everything I need to do it. So now it's just like making.
Get after it. Yep.
We're in making time. We're all set up. We're all unpacked. Time to go.
That's right. So cool. Yeah, I can't wait for folks to get into what you're doing and sort of follow it. And again, like one of the main reasons we wanted to jump on here to talk about and to sort of promote the fact that Kina is featured chef on OWN's Food Fantasies program, which airs at 1:30 p.m. Tomorrow on OWN and every week. So you have is it two episodes? So this one,
Yeah, I think there's sequential episodes. So, this episode coming out this Saturday, I make one of my desserts. Desserts are big for me. I want to say like 80% of my professional work is dessert. I have a scientific approach to recipe writing, so it's not a big surprise.
okay.
And then the second one is actually an ode to a London pub dish. Um, so that will be the following Saturday.
Awesome. We will be watching. Yeah, I'm so just glad that you exist in the world, and Jaconi is such a fresh idea, and I just am so looking forward to I can't wait to talk to you a decade from now after all the cool things have popped off, and Jaconi is a juggernaut. To sort of circle back and say, hey, remember when?
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm really excited to see where we go, especially once we can get back. Like I am the most excited for our events to come again. So that's another thing too. Whichever when we get to that point, keep us in mind because I feel like half of our events we did too were collaborations. Someone was like, "Hey, I want to do cookbook panel about like with cookbook authors." I'm like, "Sure, let's do it." So we're open to outside ideas because like we have the space. I think on the behind the scenes part of food media, ooh, we haven't got into
Hmm.
that. There's not a lot of us here, if any. It's a little drop little drop in the bucket. So people are interested in working in food media. We have like an intern program here. Um, we want to have the space for people to learn, build careers here. So it isn't just one black food stylist for us to call or just one of, because right
That's
now
right.
we're in the 1-1-1 game. And the 1-1-1
Yeah.
game it's sad and also a big bummer when that one is booked. You're like, but
Yep.
I wanted
Yep.
one.
Yeah, I'm gonna ring the alarm about that because it feels to me there's so many folks who literally are just looking for a beacon like yours in the port, and it exists, and there
Yeah.
are creatives that certainly exist, but to your point, like feel alone, and they are not, and they could have a home. Somebody asked if you could talk a little bit more about your dish that you're going to be presenting. Maybe don't
Ooh.
give away the following week's dish. Maybe talk about the one that airs tomorrow.
Yeah, so the one tomorrow is kind of like this was really fun because I had a recipe I had like from 5 years ago that I revamped because, if any of us look at like how you cook now and a while ago, it's different. So I kind of modernized to my how I cook now, a pumpkin bread bottom cheesecake. So it's like
Oh,
a really soft, moist, like pumpkin layer. And then on top is a maple cheesecake. And there's like a crumble of like some little maple candied pecans and some pumpkin seeds because you got to like tie it in together on
I want to
top.
bite of
And
that
that
right
crumble
now.
alone, the extra crumble, I literally, kid you not, had in a mini Ziploc bag in my car for a traffic snack because LA traffic is back in full force and I get hangry. And it's insanely that crumble alone is one of my favorites, but that is a fun hybrid dessert that I'll be making on tomorrow's episode of Food Fantasies.
That sounds delicious. And right in time for fall and holidays and all that jazz. So yeah, we're gonna be. I also love about that show. Like there's each segment lets the chef kind of just breathe and like sort of lean into their sort of energy, like how they present recipes. It's not one standardized way to do it. Um, and some of them are more story driven, more of some of them are more technical. But yeah, I sort of give everybody an opportunity to just kind of shine and sort of refer back to what they normally do in their own work.
Exactly. Because,
So,
like, I think for pumpkin, mind you, I've never made half of the American foods the traditional way. 'Cause I'm like, that seems cool and let's go do it my own way. So I'm big on spice blends. So I create my own like pumpkin masala blend to like go in there. And that blend, y'all, I'm just like, can OWN not publish that recipe because we need to bottle it up and sell it.
that's right.
Because I made so much. I put it in everything. Like all my seasonal cakes I've been making this season, I put scoop of this, scoop of that, and all of it. Um, so if anyone does cook anything, you should make a little spice blend, and your baking will thank
That's right. Well, I sort of have noticed the On in the Kitchen um Instagram, but also on the site, they sort of I think the recipes were up, or maybe at least the feature of each chef's recipes are sort of finally up there. So you can go to OWN TV, go to the On the Kitchen, OWN TV's Instagram feed, and find after tomorrow's episode airs, you can find Kiana's recipe and get into her next two episodes and get your life. But you can also just follow her here on Instagram and go over to Jikoni on JikoniCreative.com and check out all the cool things they have going on there. So many, many ways to get into her work.
you. Yeah, we literally have food peppered all over the web.
That's right. And your YouTube channel. So just yeah, everywhere. Just all the areas. Just keep current. But I appreciate your time on the holiday. Now we got a chance to have this conversation, and I'm super excited to just be following your work.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always happy to chat food and the work. But yeah, if anyone who is chatting here today, or if you know anyone, we're always ready to work with folks to like bring their recipes, family recipes to life. I'm so happy with like the range of cuisines that we've had. I've been eating a lot of delicious things that I've never had before. So keep them coming because we want to, like I said, we really want to create a reliable space where we can be like, I wish I could have this one thing. And so everyone's recipes are welcome.
Yeah, so good. All right, lady, I appreciate you, and we'll talk to you very soon. But thanks so much for doing this.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Awesome. So that was so great. You can follow Kiano here on Instagram, all the socials, JikoniCreative.com. Also next week, I tentatively, but probably will have Naisha Arrington, who's also a feature chef, whose episode will start airing next week. So we'll be talking to her next Friday. But yeah, man, happy holidays to everybody, and thanks for paying attention. And check out all the cool things that Kiano has going on.